Now, the BRICS began as Brazil, Russia, India and China nearly 2 decades ago. Since then, the grouping's popularity has been on the rise. More than 30 countries expressing an interest in joining the bloc. Now, this is the first BRICS summit at Kazan after its last major expansion last January. The BRICS nations account for 45% of the global population. Added together, BRICS economies are worth more than 28 trillion. That's around 28% of the global economy. Now, China's economic size and increasing assertiveness give it a dominant position in BRICS. Not just that, all BRICS members except India and Brazil are part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. Now, India's fast growth and increasing geopolitical heft also poses a challenge for the continuation of BRICS as a China-centric grouping. Now, can India navigate a China-dominated BRICS? And how should India navigate BRICS for its own benefits? Joining me to discuss this are Ambassador Jain Dasgupta, Dr. Rajan Kumar, Professor of Russian Studies, Leila Turayanova, researcher at the Center for Indian Ocean Region, IMEMO, and my colleague Sridharan continues to remain with me in the studio here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. Leila, I want to start by asking you this. The Russia-Ukraine war has seen Russia pivot away from the West towards the East, primarily to the two biggest economies in the world right now, that's India and China. How much more important is the Russia-India-China axis for Russia, given the trajectory of geopolitics in the last couple of months? How important are Russia and India and China to Russia's own economic growth?
Thank you for the question. Yes, indeed, for at least a decade, Russia has been talking about the need to turn to the East for both economic and geopolitical reasons, but only the beginning of the conflict in Ukraine and the hybrid war with the West have accelerated this process. Naturally, Russia's key partners in Asia are China and India. Both are great powers. I would say that in the current geopolitical context, both China and India are equally important for Russia. Both are strategic partners in Russia in political, in economic and military technical spheres.
Yes.
Russia has emerged as the largest supplier of crude oil to both China and India, of other important resources and goods. And in the context of anti-Russian Western sanctions, China and India became important sources of restricted goods, including high-tech goods. But
Right.
It should be noted that Russia's friends or Russia's partners, India and China, support Russia in its desire to form a truly multipolar world system. There are lots of values that both countries share, including rejection of unilateral sanctions, interference of international affairs. Therefore, I would say that both China and India are natural partners and friends of Russia.
Right.
When we talk about Russia, India, China, the triangle,
Yes.
it's worth noting that this format was at the core of BRICS, at the core of this format, because it started from the RIC.
Right.
An important platform for exchanging opinions on all international issues. But in recent years, as you know, due to the tense relations between India and China, work of this format has been frozen, but we believe that it will resume soon thanks to the thaw in the border dispute between India and Russia.
Right, absolutely. The thaw and I think Sri, Moscow is looking at this with a sigh of relief, because the thaw between India and China, the two biggest partners, literally two biggest economies in BRICS, was actually holding progress. But as we were discussing in the previous segment, there is the dragon in the room, and it's big, it's in our face, it's in the BRICS summit, and China is literally calling the shots there because it's simply the biggest economy there. It has a lot of countries on its Belt and Road Initiative as well. How wary should we be of engaging with BRICS? Because it's primarily an economic body. What do we need to do to ensure that our economic interests are protected in a multilateral grouping like BRICS?
So, to my mind, Sandeep, I think India's interest is predominantly economic
Yes.
in this, while there's definitely a geopolitical rebalancing that we are trying to do. But I think the Prime Minister himself has said that non-West doesn't mean that it's anti-West.
Yes.
Right? So we are very clear. India, I think the new India is engaging with countries and blocs on a need basis.
Right.
Wherever its interests are served best, India is going in and
Yes.
doing deals, whether it's with Russia, it's with China, or whoever else, even
Right.
Iran, for example.
Yes.
And the interesting thing is, unlike most countries, India is well loved by even, people who don't see eye to eye. Like,
Right.
we can go into a room
Yes.
full of enemies and still everyone comes to like India and say, okay, can you solve our problems and be the,
Yes.
informal.
Friends of everybody and
Absolutely.
enemies of
That's
no one.
because
Yes.
we have never been an aggressive
Yes.
country. We are not, gone to war with anyone.
Yes.
We are focused on our own development issues
Right.
and taking people along. As a whole
Yes.
global South,
Right.
India seems like a natural, a leader for the.
Yes.
And I don't think anyone would want to trust China beyond a point because China's ambitions are very clear.
Right.
It's
Right.
about China first.
Right.
Right. It's not about anyone else like taking others together.
Absolutely.
So I think we will always be wary of that. And
Yes.
it's not just, India. I'm very sure even Russia,
Yes.
despite all the bromance that's on display between Putin and
Right,
Xi
right.
Jinping, they will be wary of a very strong, because ultimately
Yes.
Russia doesn't, just like India doesn't want to replace a US with a new China,
Yes.
Russia doesn't want to give in its own position to some other newer power.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
So it's all about calibrating and making sure that everyone's sovereignty is respected, that everyone
Yes.
gets the respect that's due.
Right.
And you're on a keel where you can do global trade, global transactions on an
Yes.
even footing.
Two very distinct philosophies here at play in BRICS. You have the Chinese philosophy, that's China first, and the Indian philosophy, let's take everyone along.
Exactly.
And Dr. Rajan Kumar, we were just talking about China's so-called thaw along the LAC in the previous segment of the show, where it is trust but verify, right, when it comes to the military positions on the ground. Given the China's economic heft and the fact that it likes to, get countries into debt traps and all of that we've seen with BRI, the new agenda for China seems to be to expand BRICS, into turn it into some kind of a G77 with so many countries on board that you actually lose sight of why you actually created BRICS in the first place. Do you see that as a danger over here, and what could India do to stand guard against this?
Yeah, thank you for asking me this question. First, let me tell you that there are advantages as well as disadvantages to the expansion that we are referring to.
Yes.
First, let me give you the pros of having new members. The West Asia was completely absent from the BRICS.
Yes.
And now you have a representation from West Asian country, Iran. If Saudi Arabia becomes a member, UAE you have, and
Yes.
also extended West Asia in the form of Egypt, and then you have African
Ethiopia as well, yes.
Yeah. These countries are also Islamic states.
Yes.
And added to that there is an advantage of these countries. Many of these countries are also oil producing and exporting countries.
Yes.
So if you view from that perspective, it gives huge economic and geopolitical advantage to BRICS.
Right.
And now coming to the disadvantage, that
Yes.
the first major disadvantage is that BRICS normally decides by consensus.
Yes.
That if anybody disagrees, then the decision will not be taken. Now,
Right.
if you have so many members, now 9 members, and if Saudi Arabia joins, then you have 10 members. So the Big Bang expansion might create a problem in the sense that decision-making, consensus building would be a
Yes.
cooling task now. So
Right.
that's the first major problem. The second problem is that because the West Asian countries are geopolitical rivals. For instance, Saudi Arabia is a rival of Iran, and
Yes.
then you also have Iran under threat because of the ongoing conflict in Gaza. So you can also reflect the BRICS might also become a kind of platform for the geopolitical rivalry that you see in that region. So that's the second fear. And third, as you rightly pointed out, that
Yes.
it will not become a talk shop like the way NAM or G77 became. NAM and
Yes.
G77 still exist, but
Right.
what is the value of it? It has
Yes.
completely gone into oblivion.
Absolutely,
you're
yes.
absolutely right that there are disadvantages, but also there are certain advantages.
There are certain advantages indeed. And of course, Sri, the inherent contradictions with some of the members, like you have India, China, you have Iran, Saudi Arabia, UAE.
Absolutely.
They're
Disparate actors with
yes.
conflicting interests.
conflicting
sometimes.
interests, which is
Yeah.
why, if you look at the grouping of the BRICS economies, it's 35 25.6%, whereas G7 is just 30%. But these numbers don't tell the whole story, and I'm going to ask Ambassador Dasgupta that. Ambassador Dasgupta, how does India prevent BRICS from becoming China-driven, and the fact that China could be driving its own agenda here? It's the dragon in the room, as we're calling it. Russia can, of course, handle as aggressive China, rising China, but when it comes to India, for instance, and the other countries, how do you safeguard against a BRICS that expands beyond the original core, where then consensus making becomes elusive, and as Dr. Rajan Kumar was mentioning, it becomes another talk shop? How do you prevent that from happening?
Well, I think you have to go back to the reasons why BRICS was set up. And it was basically to ensure that these countries which had a tremendous growth potential,
Yes.
So-called emerging markets, including Russia as well, of course, they had a larger say in the IMF and World Bank to start with. And they could should not be in a position to, get pushed around by the other countries, chiefly the US and the West.
Right.
Now, that, to a certain extent, has already been, served, that interest. And the second one, which was concomitant with that, was the setting up of the new development bank.
Yes.
Which has been set up with its headquarters in China, and about $32 billion worth of infrastructure projects have also been sanctioned by that. So the hegemony of the World Bank and, in the East Asian Development Bank has been challenged in sufficient measure.
Yes.
Now, having said that, now one of the very ambitious agenda points which was not openly talked about was to have a de-dollarization agenda.
Right.
Now, we are very, very far from that,
Yes.
and serious efforts have not really been made in that direction.
Right.
So basically what BRICS is trying to do is to build up a kind of a narrative against US West Europe domination of global institutions, and this year's theme is about multilateralism.
Yes.
Whether you talk of the UN or you talk of many other multilateral agencies, there is discord, there is a lack of consensus, and things are not moving forward.
Right.
And I think the Russians are basically trying to say that we all have to join together to take the global agenda forward.
Right, but thanks, Ambassador Dasgupta. I'm going to bring my colleague Sridharan on this. Sri, easier said than done. De-dollarization, it doesn't seem to be anywhere on
Not going to happen. I'll tell you why. Because the only currency right now in the BRICS grouping which can potentially be a rival to dollar is the renminbi.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Now, why would you want to replace dollar with a renminbi?
Yes.
Right. It's not in China, in India's interest, not in Russia's interest, or anyone else's interest. In fact, in countries like Argentina, the new president is talking about, talking in favor of dollar, right?
Yeah.
So that's number one. Now, BRICS is also talking about a new currency which is backed by gold.
Yes.
Now we've seen the experience with euro.
Yeah.
The Eurozone and euro was set up as an alternative to the dollar.
Yes.
But we've seen that it hasn't really been able to challenge dollar in any significant way.
Right.
Because the reason why a currency becomes the safe haven for the world,
the default currency for the world,
the default currency is a variety of complex factors.
Right.
But the strength of the economy, the stability of the economy, the stability of the institutions, the economic institutions, the depth of the market, and the robustness of the judiciary.
Right.
These are all complex things that go into deciding whether a currency has a real shot at becoming a global safe haven. Right. And I don't see that happening with renminbi anytime soon.
Right. Of course. And India would be, of course, very uncomfortable if the renminbi, of course, became the default
Absolutely.
currency.
We don't want that. But
That's
what might happen is between these countries, we might have greater trading happening in local currencies.
Right.
Okay. But does it mean there's going to be de-dollarization? I don't think so.
It's let's ask Leila this question. Leila, the fact one of the stated objectives of the BRICS summit at Kazan has been to move away from Western institutions like the World Bank and the IMF, and to create a parallel system which can then service the countries of the emerging global south, for instance. And as my colleague Sridharan mentioned, the fact that de-dollarization, while it sounds very attractive as a concept, it practically doesn't seem to be on the horizon. But tell us what Russia's expectations are from this crucial summit at Kazan, economically, because primarily the one thing that we can all agree on is the economy. We may have our differences around the border and with standoffs and all that, but everyone agrees that it's the right forum for the economies of all the partner nations to grow.
Actually, to tell you the truth, we don't expect major economic decisions to be taken at the summit in Kazan because it needs lots of technical discussions between all the sides.
Right.
But of course, the main goal right now is creating an international reserve currency.
Yes.
That would be independent from the Western dominated system. So in Russia, from Russia's perspective, Brics in the future can emerge as an alternative to the G20, which was monopolized by the West.
Right, absolutely. Important point there, the fact that the BRICS could emerge as an alternative to the G20 and possibly even the G7. Dr. Rajan Kumar, you see that happening given the trajectory of the way the economies are growing of India and China especially, and of course Russia indeed. At some point, would they outstrip the G7 countries? They already have, but some kind of consensus seems to be eluding all the BRICS countries. What is commonly mentioned, for instance, is that the BRICS does not even have a secretariat. That's one big failing that if you look at it.
G7.
Yeah, but I think the G7 produces more tangible outcomes because the countries don't have the kind of contradictions that many of the BRICS countries have. Your thoughts on this, Dr. Rajan?
I think we are looking at BRICS from G7's perspective or
Yes.
the Western perspective.
Right.
Are making the mistake of looking at global southern organization from that perspective, where
Right.
we expect those countries to have some kind of common cultural values, some kind
Right.
of common political system. I think that's an unfair evaluation of BRICS countries.
Right.
BRICS is the most diverse global organization in the world today.
Yes.
And as far as even the G7 does not have secretariat. And
Yeah.
as far as formally it is said in international politics that you have to have a secretariat to claim a formal organization. So in that
Yeah.
sense, it's not a formal organization. But again, there is a catch here. The catch here is that BRICS has certain institutions which have secretariat. For instance, New Development Bank, which is based in Shanghai. As far as outstripping the G20 or G7 is concerned, let me tell you that it has already overtaken G7 in terms of economic power.
Yes.
Now, the share of G7 come down from at roughly 41% 2 decades earlier to about 24-25%, and it has
Right.
the BRICS with BRICS Plus it has gone up to about 30%. If I take PPPs, then it can be a little more also. So in my view, the BRICS BRICS do not expect BRICS to have the same cultural value or the political system.
Yes.
If I talk about the political systems, is so diverse that you have democracies, you have authoritarian system, you have a theological country, you have monarchies.
Yes.
So it's very diverse. But even then, BRICS has held 16 regular summits.
Yes.
BRICS has created certain institutions. And as far as de-dollarization is concerned, let me tell you very clearly that BRICS is not even attempting at this moment to create a new currency, and BRICS knows that that is not possible.
Yes.
But what the steps that are being taken by BRICS, there are two major steps. But first is that it's trying to develop a mechanism through which it can trade within the BRICS country through some either through national currency or through what they are calling it a BRICS pay kind of mechanism, where they will be pegged either to the digital currency or to the national currency. So yes, I agree with your previous speaker that the de-dollarization will not be completely possible, but the attempt is definitely to drift away from the dollar system. And if I tell you, Russia today is trading almost 95% of its trade in the national currency with China. is also expanding trade with India in the local national currency. Same with Brazil, and that will have some impact on dollar. And that's why Trump also said that the countries which are trying to weaken the dollar, they'll be sanctioned. So even the West is worried about the possible steps of de-dollarization. It's going to take time, but gradually it's going to happen.
It's going to happen gradually, but it doesn't seem to be happening in the near future, Sri. But thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this show as we're talking about the Brics Summit, this landmark Brics Summit at Kazan in Russia, where there's our Russian hosts have obviously heaved a sigh of relief to see the thaw between India and China. But of course, in India, we are extremely wary of China, not only on the LAC, but also at the Brics Summit itself, or we're calling it the dragon in the room. But thank you very much, Ambassador Jain Das Gupta, Dr. Rajan Kumar, Leila Turayanova, and my colleague R. Sridharan for joining us this evening.